So let's talk about ternary operator chaining in JavaScript. It's quite a cool trick to make your code leaner and cleaner in JavaScript. So let's get started. I'll show you a few examples. I've opened up my JS fiddle window, and let's define an object called user, which has a key called address, which the value of which is an object itself with a key called street. And let's say the street is 5th Avenue, right? So this is called as a nested object, right? Which has a key, and then the value itself is an object, and inside that is a key, and then there's a value, or this value could have also been an object, and so on. It could have been a very nested kind of an object. And you get to work with these kind of nested objects very often if you work with APIs. So let's say, for example, if you work with Stripe API, for example, you'll get an object like this for your customer object, where you'll have his the customer's data, and then your the customer's address, and the address itself will be quite nested, right? Now, the thing is, let's say you're working with Stripe, right? So if you want to build some business logic in your backend application, you need to take some actions based on whether the user has an address or a street or not, right? So let's say the user has some kind of if the user is present, as in the user data is there, then you will take some action. So a typical if and else condition would be something like this. So you'll take some action. Let's say some action is taken, right? So these are JavaScript comments, by the way, if you don't know. And then if you let's say the user is present and he also has an address, right? So we'll say user dot address, right? That means the user was present, so we entered into this if loop, block, and then you're checking if the user also has an address, and then you'll take some other action. So you'll say some other action is taken, which requires user address, right? And then now if the user is there and the user also has an address, now let's say if you want to take some another action, if the user also has the street name mentioned in his address, then we'll have something like this, some action where which requires user street, right, in the address, right? So this is how you would create your for loops, and this will keep getting quite long, and there will be a lot of chaining, a lot of looping, inside, and a lot of nesting inside the if statements, and this can get quite confusing and very difficult to manage after a while. Now there is an easy way to do this. So before that, I'll just show you how you can access this value street. So you have to access it saying user dot address dot street. Now this is important to know because the examples that we'll see now will take this into consideration. So this is how you can access 5th Avenue, right? So if you just said user dot address, it would just show you this entire object with street 5th Avenue. So that's why it's saying object. But if you said dot street, it will give you just the street, which is 5th Avenue, right? So user dot address dot street. So I hope that makes sense. So now let's look at what ternary operator chaining is. So you've already worked with ternary operators in one of my previous videos. You can go and check it out if you don't know what ternary operators are. But what I'm talking about here is ternary operator chaining, in the sense you can chaining like checking multiple conditions based on previous conditions. So let's say if user had an address, right? So we want some action to be taken if user has an address, and some other action to be taken. So this is what we will write here will be based on if, and what we'll write after this colon will be based on else, right? So else, we'll say that address is equal to false. So let's say address is a is a boolean variable, and it'll be false if the user address is not there. But if user address is there, then we'll check something, then we'll do something, right? So let's see what we do here. So if the user has an address, then we'll go and check if the user has a street also, right? And then we'll put another question mark here, because if the user has a street, we'll say street is equal to true. Otherwise, we'll say street is equal to false, right? So now we'll say alert street. Let's see what happens. So we'll say true. Street is true because obviously, street is defined for the user. So that's why it says street is equal to true. So I hope that makes sense, in the sense you're first checking user address, and then it goes into this block where you check the street also, and if the street is there, then you put it true, else you put it false. And if a user address is not there, then address becomes false automatically, right? So this is very, very handy, and something that you'll use a lot. And just because JSON objects become very, very complicated to work with because they're very nested. So that's where Lodash comes in, which we'll also look at later on. And otherwise you can work with just ternary operator chaining, which is quite simple to use as well. So I hope this was helpful, and we look at a few more examples in some of the upcoming videos as well. So if you like this, then do subscribe, and thanks a lot for watching.